welcome to Te Ora Tea Talks in association with Good Magazine. I'm Carolyn Enting, and today we're here to talk with Wendyl Nissen, who's just produced an amazing new book. So it's great to have you here, Wendyl.
Thanks for holding up my book. I've got one here too. Look at that, we've both got one.
Oh, it's just such a great book. Now, I believe it's your 9th book. You're also a journalist, a broadcaster, former magazine editor, and now you live the good life up in Hokianga.
I do. I live in the Hokianga. I'm looking right out at the harbour now. It's a beautiful autumn day. We're just having the best weather, which is probably just as well as we're all locked in. So it's nice to at least be able to get out in the garden and enjoy some sunshine.
That's fantastic. And I think the timing of your book's fantastic too. I'd love you to talk more about it because it talks about sort of, slowing it down, getting back to basics, following the seasons. And it just seems really apt right now.
It is, and the reason I wrote the book is that I've done 1 year up here full time. We bought this house about 5 years ago, but my husband and I were just too busy in Auckland. We finally worked out our work commitment so that we could be up here for a year. So it was started off as a tale of 2 Aucklanders moving to the country, and we're awful Aucklanders. We just, and trying really hard not to step on toes and not to be those people. But also for about 20 years, I've been trying to live sustainably. I've been organic. I've been having gardens. I've written books. I've started a company called Wendyl's Green Goddess where I sold cleaning products for 6 years. Thank God I don't do that anymore. But it's been my mantra is, live like your Nana did, live the old fashioned way. So finally, we got to come up here and practice it. So we've been sort of living like that for a year. And so then the lockdown came. It was like, oh, well, we're quite actually well set up. Don't be too smug, but yeah, it was basically strangely normal for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess, I've personally spending time in my garden in the last, couple of weeks during lockdown. I've found it very, it's kind of reduced my anxiety around, the COVID-19 and just you go out there and you've got your hands in the earth, you're planting, you're weeding, and you just forget about everything. And so, and in your book, you also touch on anxiety and depression in a very sort of honest and real way, and share how you've suffered from that in the past. And you shared some calming techniques, including micronutrients, mindfulness knot, and tapping. And so I just thought, can you tell us more about those?
Yeah, I've suffered from anxiety all my life and had a couple of, depression. When you've had depressive episodes, they're always sort of sitting on your shoulder. That's why they call it the black dog. And I thought it's about time I started writing, as I was writing this book about all seasons and cugging cows and collecting eggs from the hens, I thought, mate, you've got to be honest about what's going on. And so I was very honest about a breakdown I had just prior to coming up here. And I thought it's time to talk about it. So I talk about ways to ease your anxiety. And you're right, gardening, there are numerous studies that have come out that said just getting out in nature is amazing. And it sounds all kind of ooky spooky and oh yeah, whatever. But it really does trigger some, stuff in your head and makes you feel so much better. I have a boulder on our beach in front of me that I'm looking at. We have these huge boulders. I hug a boulder every day. I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but it's my little sort of touchstone. They're huge boulders. They're called concretions and they've been around for millions of years apparently.
Wow.
So I hug that. Occasionally there's a startled tourist that looks at me like, oh my God, who is that? And so, yeah, I say not mindfulness because I'm into meditation. I think I use meditation more as a tool rather than something I do religiously every day because I'm just not into that I'm not that good at routine. But mindfulness, I just, when I had my radio show, I interviewed so many people about mindfulness and all they could say was, oh, you hold an apple and you eat it and you really think about that apple, or you have a cup of tea and you sip it. And I'm like, what? I just don't understand it. And I've read a few books about it and I think this is my little theory, that corporations bring mindfulness experts in to kind of explain to their employees why they're so stressed out and why, because they're working long hours and overtime and never seeing their family. It's not their fault. It's because they're not being mindful. you know.
Oh,
Be mindful of your cup of tea, you'll feel a lot better. It's like, nah, not buying into that. So yeah, I do meditation. And like today, I mean, this is an anxious time for a lot of people being in lockdown. My husband and I just lost all our work from magazines closing down. And I woke up this morning, I felt really, really anxious. And because you think about the future all the time, you're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen after 4 weeks? Is it going to go on? What are we going to do for work? And I just made a list for my day today, because I used to do that when I was really busy, you know, being a magazine editor and doing a million things and raising a family and everything. And I thought you need to get some structure in your day rather than sitting there. A lot of people going, this is great, I get to read books all day, and I need structure. So I wrote a list for myself, which was like water the garden, you know, and clean the bathroom ceiling, which I've just done. Haven't done that, meant to do that 5 years ago when we bought the house. So it's just little tools that I think you can use to just settle your mind. And I think anxiety is a really huge problem in this country. And the more we can talk about it and help each other, the better, I think.
No, I totally agree. I'm definitely a list maker. In fact, funny enough, I had water the feijoas this morning on top of my list. It's the first thing I had to do.
Well, it just gives you a sense of purpose. You get to the end of the day and you think, well, I did all that. That's great.
No, absolutely. Because yeah, and you're just learning new things too. Like just getting outside this morning and having some fresh air before I sat down in front of my computer. I just sort of felt, you know, like I'd done something. It was great.
Yeah, really important.
So a natural year. You assume that would be a year in the making because it spans a year. But I mean, how long have you had this sort of idea on the boil, and how long did it take to bring together?
Well, actually, I wrote it in the year while I was living the year. And I say in my intro, my mum got sick and died last year. So that was about 3 months when I was out of action. And I actually wrote a lot of it overseas. I was in New York in an apartment in the heat wave. I was on a cruise ship, of all things.
Oh my God, I'm on a cruise ship now.
Yeah, so I sort of wrote it on the fly a bit and then tested. I mean, I've got 100 new recipes in there, tested the recipes in my kitchen. You know, and the research, like finding that you can make yogurt from chilli stalks, like amazing. And I found this in a really old book. I'm like, it's not going to work. It does, you know. And making a sourdough starter from grapes off your vine, I thought, well, I don't know if you've ever tried to make a sourdough starter. They're bloody hard, and it works. So I got a lot of delight in finding stuff. I've got hundreds of old cookbooks that I've been collecting for years, finding stuff that was new and interesting and stuff that you can just do in your home, basically.
Well, I was going to mention your recipes actually, because I did try your hot camembert recipe just on Friday night, and it was fantastic. I've got rosemary in the garden, and I had garlic, and I had a camembert, so I stuck the sprigs in to the camembert as you suggested, and the rosemary, and put it in the oven for 10 minutes, and it was just absolutely just scrummy. And I thought I would never have thought of that, and I was just
forms it. It transforms it. And the reason I put that recipe in is also I do a chapter about living in the country, you know, realistic expectations. And we get a lot of visitors up here and they always bring cheese, which is great. But you end up with like 10 wheels of camembert. So you can then freeze it and then you can bring it out and do exactly what you did. So yeah, all sorts of things like that, and not wasting food.
Well, I also have to find another use for rosemary, because apart from using it for lamb chops, my imagination's not very good. So I thought, oh my God, this is so
good. You can use it for hair. It's be good for your hair with a brunette.
Okay.
A bit of vinegar and a bit of rosemary, transformed.
Oh, okay. Another great tip. Now, I see that you've also got a bunch of natural cough remedies in your book too, which are handy as we're heading into the flu season, not to mention COVID-19. How did you discover these cough medicines?
Oh, these are just all old recipes that I've researched over the years, and most of them work. My favourite is the turnip one, where you basically put slices of swede, and then you layer it with sugar, and then it makes the syrup. And it works really well. So, yeah, they're just alternatives, and everyone finds one that works for them.
Okay, that's fantastic. And how does it taste with the swede and the sugar?
Beautiful. Sweet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. So, we're currently in autumn, although it still feels like summer in Auckland, and we're moving into winter. What are the favourite things for you as part of those seasons?
Autumn is just having the most beautiful autumn at the moment. At the moment, I've got a small orchard, so I am I've done all the apples and the pears. So chutney, jam, cordial. My big thing at the moment is cordial, and I put a lot of recipes in the book because I'm trying not to drink. And when you sit down at the end of the day and have a beautiful, sweet, natural cordial with some soda water, it kind of makes you feel like you're having a drink. I just made some out of cherry guavas yesterday. So yeah, the apples and the pears have all been done. They've all been made into things, cakes and things. Now we've got the quinces. So, there's only so much you can do with the quince, but the quince cordial is quite nice. And just the regeneration, just the sweeping everything up, tidying everything up, getting into the pruning season. And the thing about autumn is it's a nice slow down trigger, and I write about that in the book. You look at your trees in the orchard, they lose all their leaves and they just hunker down, and I think that's exactly what we need to do in winter, and what we like to do, don't we? We like to kind of just slow everything down, light the fire, shorter days, and so autumn is a great signal for doing that.
It just kind of almost feels like what we've been forced to do as well with COVID-19 is we've been forced to slow down. I've been writing so many articles in the magazine about how we stop rushing, how we need to slow down, all the stuff, and now we're actually being forced to do that.
I think we're going to come out of this. I'm going to harp on and be a greenie for a minute, but the environment is having a really nice time. Now that you read these stories about the skies clearing after being polluted. And in my book, I write about, because this was pre-COVID, about in World War II, how we all banded together and the women went into the factories, and the factories made the things that we needed. And we changed the whole world to fight this enemy. And I pleaded, climate change, it's an enemy. We just can't, it's not actually marching, in boots and with guns. It's there. And so I think this has given us all a chance to go, okay, we can actually pull it inside and we can actually make a difference to the climate just by 4 weeks of isolation, if that's what it turns out to be, or 8 weeks. So I think we're all going to come out of this with a bit more awareness. And also an awareness I also talk in my book about consumer power, about banding together, and how I grew up when there was the Vietnam War protests, the Springbok protests. And we don't do that anymore. We don't have unions anymore. We don't band together and use our power to make change. And so I also asked for that. And I think we're going to see a bit more of that, people actually banding together, because numbers count. And especially as a consumer, if we all stopped buying really awful food, the supermarkets wouldn't stock it. So ideally we should all be buying free range chicken, but not everyone can afford that. So that's not their job. Their job is to get food on the table. But for those of us who have a bit more income, pay that extra couple of dollars for free range, because it's a vote. It's supporting the producer who's upgraded his system to provide you with free range, and it's supporting better production. So I think this is all going to be a result. I'm trying to be positive. I think we're going to come out of this and go, wow, we can actually do a lot of stuff that we didn't realise we could do before.
I totally agree. We're going to be able to support local again, New Zealand made, but also, as you were saying, just the fact in the last 4 weeks, we've seen, or the last few months, I guess, with this starting in China, how the world is healing through pollution and carbon emissions. And we've all been talking about this whole, cutting carbon emissions and how are we going to do that? And suddenly it's like the world's been ground to a halt, and we've been shown how to do it.
Exactly. It's amazing. And so you've got to look for the good in everything. And I'm also seeing a real resurgence in patriotic behavior. We're not like the Americans. We're not like flying the flag and being all, but we are also proud at the moment. We're so proud of our country and our Prime Minister and just everyone, has done such a great job. And I love that. I love that we're actually feeling patriotic again.
No, I love that too. And I also love reading news. I read the news today about some turtles that have come onto the beaches in, I think it was Brazil or Costa Rica, because the people aren't on the beach because they're all in lockdown.
Yeah, so they can,
these turtles are coming onto the beach they stay away from normally, and they're laying eggs. And it's like, oh my God, incredible. So speaking about going back to winter, I absolutely laughed when I read about you talking about your hunter wellies and moving on to Ray-Bans, because I went to Splore Festival a couple of years ago and I thought, I'm going to be all Kate Moss.
Yeah.
Had my lovely hunters on. I couldn't get the damn things off my legs. My partner had to, every night, he literally had to pull them off. It was such a palaver. And honestly, it was just, I would have had to, if he wasn't there, I would have had to have slept with Mon.
Yeah, no, and that's getting back to that Aucklander in the country thing. You know, when you're in Auckland, you think, oh, yes, I need to wear stylish clothes. When you live in the country, you wear your red bands because they're designed for our mud. You wear really good wet weather gear that you buy at the farm store because it works. And anything else, you get the rain down your back, and there's nothing worse than that. So, yeah, I also write about coming into a country, like a small place like this in the Hokianga. And so many Aucklands sort of arrive and they're like, oh, you should be doing this. Let's do that. Change this. Why haven't you done that? Whereas when you really love a place as much as I love this place, you love it just the way it is. So you just ease in. And I think a lot of people, when I arrived here, were like, oh, she never opens the gate. You know, because if you're a friendly type person, you leave your gate open. If you're not, you shut it. And it's just because I just wanted to just blend in. I just wanted to be someone who, you know, in a couple of years' time, they'll say, who's that woman? You know, I didn't want to come in with a hiss and a holler and have cocktail parties and wear my white capri pants and get out my jet ski. You know, I just didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be reflective of what this place stands for, which is incredible solitude, incredible peace. So many hippies up here, so many people who started the whole thing in the 70s and the communes, and so much knowledge that they're teaching me. So yeah, I guess that's my little thing about Auckland, is it's like, don't bring Auckland with you. You know, if you want to do that, go to Pauanui or Omaha or something, which are like mini Aucklands. If you're going to go somewhere really beautiful like this, just respect it.
Well, speaking of keeping the gates open, I mean, would you lose your animals if they had the gates open? I mean, you've got chickens, haven't you? And good readers love chickens. Our highest ranking story online, and it's just consistent every week, is keeping chickens. So I wondered if you could give us some tips on on how happy chickens, and also on actually buying chickens, because I was reading your book, and obviously buying them is quite...
Yeah, there's a big warning out there. So what I learned is, so a lot of your readers probably have got battery saves. So, you know, you start out with the good intentions and you go, right, I'm going to save some battery hens. I'll get them at 18 months, look after them. I've done that so many times, and this is just my experience, but it's an experience that I had reflected in friends who've got them as well. In the big chicken houses, there's lots of little diseases and viruses going around, and they don't always bother to vaccinate because it's expensive. They only want the chickens to be alive for a year to 18 months, so it doesn't really matter. And so when you get them, chances are I'll get what I call the sleepy disease. They basically just start falling asleep all the time. They get diarrhea and then they die. So I've lost so many chickens that way. And so I just got fed up. I thought, well, I'll go and get some decent heritage hens, and then I'll get a rooster. So I've bred my own sort of weird Hokianga heritage breed. And I've gone from, in the last 6 months, I've gone from 10 to 28. So it's working. The only problem with that is you then get unwanted roosters. So I've at the moment got 6 teenage roosters causing havoc all over the property because they get quite bolshy and they attack the poor old hens, and so you've then got to find homes for them or get, you know, so, and but you also have to catch them. So that is our experience at the moment, is that every night we try and catch one. And it's not pleasant. I've nursed these a couple of these chickens weren't great when they were born. So I've, you know, found them in the nest cold, brought them in, hugged them, brought them up to room temperature, you know, to my body temperature, and had a very intimate relationship with these things. And then they grow up to be roosters, and you've got to get rid of them. But again, if you want to have hens, that's the way. Of course, in the city you can't have a rooster. So my advice is go to a good heritage breeder, someone who's just breeding for shows or breeding for the love of hens, not breeding for mass-produced meat or eggs. And then you're more likely to get one that'll be healthier. Yeah,
that's really good advice. I mean, yeah, I read that you were saying the first time you bought some, you had the wool a bit pulled over your eyes because you thought you were getting some laying hens, and you got these battery hens, and that was a learning. And
they've been in a battery. This guy at this AMP show said, oh yes, they're my pride, and he had a white jacket on like he was a judge or something, and I thought, oh yeah. Got them home, they wouldn't roost. So hens that have been brought up naturally roost in trees or on perches because that's their natural instinct, because they are blind at night, so they need to get high for safety. These things would just huddle together on the bottom of the, you know, they didn't know anything else. And that's the first sign. You go, okay, that's been in a battery.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know everyone loves the idea of having fresh eggs, and I was thinking about having them in my little house. But then when I realised you need quite a big run for them to be kind to them, don't you? To let them.
Well, also with a small property, like when I had them in Grey Lynn, I mean, we had a reasonable sized property, but man, the flies. Ooh, with the poo and, you know, and they get onto your driveway and your paths. It's actually quite a nightmare unless you've got a big property where you can free range properly. I mean, some people do have them in cities and, you know, they do keep them nicely and they've got a special area for them and it's fine. The other thing is, as I say in my book, you never have enough eggs. I mean, it's taken me to get 28, of which, of course, some of them are roosters, to finally get enough eggs because they're very temperamental, you know. They'll just go, I feel like laying today. Or they'll get a fright and the whole lot of them won't lay. So, yeah. And then there's the egg hunts because I don't lock them in. So I've got one laying in the garage in the moment. She's found a box turned over and suddenly that's her nest. Fine. I don't mind. At least I know where to find them.
Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh. Well, your book's full of so many amazing tips. And one other one I absolutely grasped on was just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, I pickled for the first time. Just before the lockdown, I was like, oh my God, I need to get my garden in shape. And I'd let it go because I'd been on deadline and I hadn't looked at it, and I went out the back and it was just this complete forest of weeds and I couldn't even see my vegetables. And I was like, oh my God. And so I was pulling away these vegetables and I just found these giant cucumbers underneath, and I would just, they're massive, like this big, and I thought, I can't waste those, I've got to make them into something, and this is terrible. And so I made pickles, and then I decided to really get into the saving mode, and I scrapped out all the cucumber seeds, and I did a YouTube on how to preserve the seeds, and then I very carefully dried them out and I put them in a jar. And then I read your tip which said don't put them in a jar because they can get mouldy, and it's better in envelopes.
Good. I'm glad you read that because you would have been really annoyed when you went to plant them in the spring and they were all mouldy. Yeah, that happened to me. That's why I know that.
So your book is just fantastic. So where can people get your book now? Your book's out. Is it out now? Has it been delayed a little bit?
That's the $64,000 question. I'm glad you asked. They are all stuck in a warehouse. So they were due to go out the week of lockdown. So, of course, no bookshops to receive them. So they're stuck in a warehouse. I've been told that the minute bookshops are open again, boom, out they'll go. So all I'm saying to people is just keep an eye on your favourite bookshop, and I'll certainly be alerting people on my Instagram. You can get the ebook if you want it. Amazon's got it, and I think the other ebooks sellers have it for New Zealand and Australia. But yeah, it's just a waiting game. But look at it this way. At least once you come out of isolation, you'll have desired to do things a bit differently, and here is the handbook to do them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I say download the ebook and then get the hard copy later.
Why not?
I think it's going to help you with the lockdown, and then it's a fantastic resource to have on hand at all times. So
I've actually been using this book a lot because it's got all my recipes in one place, which is really handy, and it's actually looking really tattered and it's got stains and things on it because I actually go back to it all the time. I cook from it every day. So I make a friend of mine has goats, and she brought over some goat's milk, which I swapped for eggs. Probably not allowed to do that, but anyway, we did it. And I made some cream cheese out of my book. Oh my God, it's like the most beautiful creamy goat's cheese you've ever had. So yeah, normally I just use normal milk, so it was a chance to use one of those recipes and make that. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's just fantastic. Well, it's been so great having a cup of tea with you.
Oh yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed my cup of tea. Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to have someone to chat to in lockdown, isn't it? We're all a bit lonely.
I know. No, this is fantastic. I'm loving this new technology. So thank you so much, Wendyl, for your time today and talking about your new book and for our Tea or a Tea talk. And yeah, I wish you all the best in your lockdown. Happy lockdown.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
See ya.